Hello, I just wanted to say a few things today about the stories from Monday that you were supposed to read: The Hills Like White Elephants and A Rose for Emily. They're such great stories, and I really wanted to encourage you, if you felt like it, right, to think about writing about some of these modern stories here. I really wish we were in class so that we could talk about them. I think we could have some great discussions, especially, about A Rose for Emily. I really do, and I'm really sad that we're not going to be able to have that direct interaction unless we establish some other form of communication here. But in general, right, I didn't want to overwhelm you with homework, so real quickly, I'm going to send some biographical information about Hemingway and Faulkner. Now, back then, right, you have these writers at the early part of the 20th century. They are actually leading interesting lives. Like Hemingway's an ambulance driver in the World War, right? He's there doing dangerous things, and then he kind of goes on to kind of embody all those masculine hobbies, like big game hunting in Africa, getting in fights everywhere he goes, getting in plane crashes and surviving them. So his life is actually pretty interesting, at least in terms of things happening, right? Things happening to him, doing things. So you might want to consider some of that, like that expatriate lifestyle, where you have all these Americans who are living in Europe at a very particular time here. And Faulkner is a different kind of figure, but he also wanted to join the military. Bird just hit the window; it scared me. He wanted to join the military, but because he was short, right? I think he was 5'6", he wasn't allowed to. So he had to try to go overseas as well to serve. So you have these authors who still wanted to do things. A lot of the modern authors, who are written since like the 1960s, if you look at their biographies, it's like, oh, he was an English teacher, right? And that's not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world. So what I wanted to contrast, though, is that Hemingway and Faulkner are two of the dominant American writers of the early 20th century, and their styles are so different, right? And actually, they had a little bit of a feud about each other's popularity, more or less. So Faulkner criticized Hemingway's sparse style and said he's never been known to use a word that would send a reader to the dictionary. And Hemingway's response to this was, poor Faulkner. He thinks that big words bring big emotions, right? So his idea of what a story is called minimalism, Hemingway's, that is, right? Where, okay, you're going to just present enough, right, to evoke certain things, and then the reader is kind of involved in it. So I'm going to send the definition of minimalism here and a little bit more background information. Now, I normally like to classify A Rose for Emily as modernist, and that would be something that I would normally ask you in class. How is this modernist, or how isn't it modernist? Remember when we talked about that, the breakdown of all these old traditions, the old way of doing things, and here the South has been completely upended, right? The closest thing the United States had to an aristocratic class were those plantation owners, right? The wealthy gentry of the South, more or less. So in A Rose for Emily, you have the complete breakdown of that system after the Civil War. But you have someone who grew up in a very certain way when she was young, but her life as an adult is completely different. And yet, it seems as if she can't really let go of that past there. So we're going to talk about a few things there. But first, I want to turn to the hills like white elephant. The hills like white elephants. And the first question I would normally ask you is, what's a white elephant? And some people usually would say, oh, the elephant in the room is something you don't want to pay attention to even though it's there. And that's not really what a white elephant is as far as, standard usage. Really, it's a rare and precious gift that you can't do anything with. So this would be like an albino elephant, right? I have one. And I'm like, oh, hey, here you go. It's yours. You can have it. And then you're like, what the heck am I going to do with an elephant, right? I can't feed it. It's too expensive. I mean, it's worth a lot of money, but nobody wants it. There's no place. I can't keep it in my backyard, right? So there's nothing I can do with it. And so here we have a rare and precious gift that there's nothing to do with because it's not going to be appreciated, right? That it's going to ruin the thing that they have. And so we have two characters talking to each other in a bar here, and they're traveling right through Spain here. Now, clearly, we have an older American, and sometimes he's called the American, right? And then we have the girl. And so it never calls her American. She's not. He's somebody that he's met somewhere. She doesn't speak Spanish like he does. So they're kind of, he's translating for her, more or less. So she's traveling with him, and clearly they have a sexual relationship, right? And this is the point where she realizes what she means to him. And he kind of is trying to suggest that what he wants is her idea, right? So They're sitting there at the Ebro. I'm just going to read a few samples here. On this side, there was no shade and no trees, and the station was between two lines of rails in the sun. Close against the side of the station, there was the warm shadow of the building, and a curtain made of strings of bamboo beads hung across the open door into the bar to keep out flies. The American and the girl with him sat at a table in the shade outside the building. It was very hot, and the express from Barcelona would come in 40 minutes. Okay, so they're going on to Madrid here. And the first question the girl asks is, what should we drink? And his answer, it was pretty hot. Let's drink beer. Dos cervezas, the man said into the curtain. Okay, so here she asks, what are we going to drink? And his response, does it answer her? No, it's hot, right? And so there's this disjunction in their communication. They are not ever really talking on the same wavelength to each other. Instead, it's like totally ruined. And when she's looking at, at the line of hills, she says they were white in the sun and the country was brown and dry. And she says, they look like white elephants. I've never seen one. The man drank his beer. No, you wouldn't have. I might have, the man said. Just because you say I wouldn't have doesn't prove anything. The girl looked at the bead curtain. They've painted something on it. What does it say? Anís del Toro. It's a drink. So all these two actually have in common, all that they can talk about is drinking. And I mean, right now we would think drinking like this would be a bad idea given the girl's condition, because what they're really not talking about is, of course, her pregnancy, right? And so he's trying to convince her to get the operation to let the air in, right? But there's something about this drink when she tries it. It tastes like licorice, the girl said and put the glass down. That's the way with everything. Yes, said the girl. Everything tastes of licorice, especially all the things you've waited so long for, like absinthe. She's not really talking about absinthe here, right? She's talking about, maybe starting a family, finding love, right? That instead of being sweet, it's bitter, like black licorice. It's not like a Twizzler, right? This is the black licorice that they're talking about here. And so he says, cut it out. And she's like, oh no, we're having a fine time here, right? And he says, yes, let's continue to have a fine time. So this conversation is not talking about what they really should be talking about, right? Which is that he doesn't want a relationship. He doesn't want that kind of commitment. She's just a fling for him. But for her, this is the possibility of something that she's always wanted, right? And so he says, this is a little further down. I'll go with you and I'll stay with you all the time. They just let the air in and then it's all perfectly natural. What will we do afterward? We'll be fine afterward, just like we were before. What makes you think so? That's the only thing bothering us. It's the only thing that's made us unhappy. And so she's kind of looking at the curtain. And you think then we'll be all right and be happy. And he says, I know we will. You don't have to be afraid. I've known lots of people that have done it. So have I, said the girl. And afterward, they were all so happy. Well, the man said, if you don't want to, you don't have to. I wouldn't have you do it if you didn't want to. But I know it's perfectly simple. And of course, this is when abortions are not necessarily legal. They're not going to be in some safe, sterile clinic. This is going to be like coat hanger style, right? This is not at all going to be safe. This is not at all going to be hygienic. She is going to risk her life if she actually goes through with it for him there. And then at the end there, right, it kind of goes on a little bit. I'm going to jump down to the end, right? Okay. Where he keeps saying, she says, I'll do it because I don't care about me. What do you mean? I don't care about me. Well, I care about you. Oh, yes. But I don't care about me. And I'll do it, and then everything will be fine. I don't want you to do it if you feel that way. The girl stood up and walked to the end of the station. Across on the other side were fields of grain and trees along the banks of the Ebro. Far away beyond the river were mountains. The shadow of a cloud moved across the field of grain. She saw the river through the trees. And we could have all this, she said. We could have everything. And every day we make it more impossible. What did you say? I said we could have everything. We can have everything. No, we can't. We can have the whole world. No, we can't. We can go everywhere. No, we can't. It isn't ours anymore. It's ours. No, it isn't. Once they take it away, you never get it back. They haven't taken it away. We'll wait and see, right? And so we have this where finally, after he keeps saying this, she's like, can't we maybe stop talking? Okay. And then she has kind of that meltdown where she's like, would you please, 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 please stop talking? And then they're just looking out there. And he says, but I don't want you to, he said. I don't care anything about it. I'll scream, the girl said. And then the train is going to come, right? The train's coming. And then all they can still talk about is the alcohol. All right, come back, we'll finish the beer. And this is the end right here. He picked up the 2 heavy bags and carried them around the station to the other tracks. He looked up the tracks but could not see the train. Coming back, he walked to the barroom where people waiting for the train were drinking. He drank an anise at the bar and looked at the people. They were all waiting reasonably for the train. He went out through the bead curtain. She was sitting at the table and smiled at him. You feel better? He asked. I feel fine, she said. There's nothing wrong with me. I feel fine. And there we have the end of the story, right? Where obviously everything is not fine, and it can't be fine because either solution, right, is not what she really wants. The indication here is that, yes, he's going to leave if she has the child, and even if she does go through with it, right, he's not going to take her seriously. This is just a fling for him. This is just a girl that he's traveling with. It's nothing serious. And he's asking her to put herself at risk for what he wants so they continue to drink and do their thing. Now, the setting of this has like flat land and then this kind of mound of hills on one side on either side of the train track. And obviously, this is symbolic of the decision that she's going to make, right? For fecundity and growth and swelling, or just that flatness there of nothingness. And there's always going to be that curtain there that divides what they want from each other. So is there a solution? Well, this child, right, is the white elephant. There really is no way around this. And so I think this is a pretty effectively sad story, even though it doesn't say a lot. And they never actually talk about what the problem is. But it's still pretty clear, I think, at the end. All right, so let's leave behind that depressing story and go to the other end of the spectrum, to the maximalism, really, of Faulkner here in A Rose for Emily. So here we have Emily Grierson, right, whose father was an influential plantation owner, military figure. And so she has even been granted all of these exceptions, right? Normally, what do people have to do? There's 2 things for sure. Got to die and you got to pay taxes. Well, she's not going to get out of death, obviously, right? The very first line we know, when Miss Emily Grierson died, our whole town went to her funeral. The men threw a sort of respectful affection for a fallen monument, the women mostly out of curiosity to see the inside of her house, which no one save an old manservant, a combined gardener and cook, had seen in the last 10 years. So she lived the last 10 years of her life completely in isolation there. But she's not like the rest of the town, right? So if I asked you who the narrator of this story was, you would have to say it's the town, it's the gossip of the town that's narrating the story, right? Where they look at Emily and they see her as a relic of a bygone time. And she really doesn't fit in, but at the same time, there's like this perverse respect and expectation for her. They talk about noblesse oblige, right? What she owes the people because she's of a higher class. And even though they don't associate with her or keep her company and she's isolated out there, when she starts hanging out with this northerner Homer, they think, oh, he's kind of like lower class for her, isn't he? He's not in that social stratification that they expect, even though those have already broken down. And now there's some things that she can't accept, right? So her father didn't think any man was good enough for her. And so he didn't let her suitors really approach. He didn't give her the opportunity to get married when she was young. Then when he died, she refused to let them take the body. She held on to it as if she was holding on to that past. Because in her life, right, what has changed? Everything. They're trying to pave the streets. They're giving them names and numbers instead of just like, well, where do you live? I live in the Grierson estate, right? And so that's something that's hugely different in her area. Like if you were going to write me something, you couldn't just say to Mark Armini, right? And then the post office would deliver it. You'd have to know my address, right? And so she's expecting that she'll be recognized by her family name, right? That good name that has been preserved. And she's even spared from paying taxes because of it, right? They give her all these kind of passes because she is the last vestige of a past that has almost vanished. But she's still there and she's like a monument, a curiosity. And what does she do? Well, when she starts hanging out with Homer, right, this northerner who's there to pave the street, so he actually is a part of the modernization efforts, it's clear that she doesn't want to let him go. And now some of the descriptions of him, like he wears those bright yellow gloves, right? They say, oh yeah, he's not the marrying kind. You see, he liked men. well, you can draw the lines there, right, if you need to. He's not going to be interested in her because he's not interested in women romantically, right? That's something that she doesn't understand. She's misconstrued that he likes men. And so eventually she probably forces that to its head. And when she realizes that he's going to leave, she takes action to prevent him from leaving. But the most interesting part about this story is that it's not as if the town doesn't realize, right? She's like, I need poison. The guy's like, what do you need it for? She's like, I need poison. Oh, rats. Okay. And then there's that stench, right? There's that stench associated with dead things there. And they're just like, are you going to tell her that she stinks? So the whole town just looks the other way and they're like, oh, Homer's gone. Don't know when he's going to come around again. So, in a way, right, it's almost like because of the position she occupies in the society, they're complicit in this, right? They just let her get away with it and they don't question anything about it because she's almost above and beyond the strictures of that particular society. She is outside it and she is lonely and she is isolated there. And then you have the servant, Toby, right, who's probably a freed slave. And he's been with her all that time. And when, there's that last act that he performs when she dies, he lets everybody in and then he escapes out the back door because he knows there's a body of Homer upstairs. But the creepiest part, of course, is that her long hair is there in bed with him and it's gray. She has been sleeping with that corpse every night for comfort. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's sexual or necrophiliac, right? But that she has that body there that can never leave her and never change, right? Death is the ultimate state of unchanging. Her attempt to exert control over her environment when so many things have changed from her youth. The entire aristocratic landscape, her entire worth and value, everything that she believed in is gone and wiped out right after the Civil War. So you have someone who really is completely cast adrift from the world of their childhood to the world of their old age. And she's like that last relic that the town is still fascinated with. So really, the town is also an interesting character in this particular book. And I really would like to talk about, the decay of certain institutions and how it affects these generations and how they view Emily. But the question that I asked you was, what do you think the rose is? Well, it could be just, the act of remembering her, right? When you throw the rose into the grave, which is kind of indicated in the opening here. It's like a remembrance of her. But also, right, how do you preserve roses? You close them in a book there. It's almost as if I think Homer's body is that rose that's been kind of preserved in the book of her life, more or less there, right? He's up there, upstairs there, and he can never leave, and he can never actually abandon her as everything else abandoned her. This is someone who can't let go of that particular past there. So I just wanted to talk about that just a little bit, right? I'm probably going to end here because I don't want to get it too long. Think about what you want to write for the final two papers. Now, I'm going to expect two sources for the next out of class, not the poetry explication, but you can do a poem if you want to. Two sources for that. The poetry explication, you can stick to, a thorough job. I think 400 words is reasonable. And then we can go longer, right, for those out of class essays, 800 and 1,000 for the two remaining. Think about what stories you're interested in, how you might want to talk about them. You can do a comparison contrast, but you need a good reason to do it. So think about those things and let me know if you need any ideas or sources or anything like that. I normally do let students expand a paper for the final paper. But you'd have to have four sources. So if you do something that you think is sophisticated enough, then you don't necessarily have to start from scratch for that final paper there. I want to make the end of this semester as painless as we possibly can make it here. But I am going to expect good sources and good research for that. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. Next time I am going to talk briefly about A Good Man Is Hard to Find, because that's also one of the great short stories. It really is. And Flannery O'Connor is a wonderful American author. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'm going to sign off with this one. Normally, I will send you the homework assignments the week, like Sunday or so, right? And then I'll normally give you. I want to make it like weekly instead of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so that way you can just send in one file and we don't have to worry about turning it in Monday instead, okay? But I do want you to read these stories. All right. I hope everyone's doing well. I miss our in-class experience. Take care.